Salutations, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland. Here I am in London on Wetherby Place, and behind me is Field Marshal Allenby's house, or Lord Allenby, as you can call him. So there it is. This very handsome red brick 1882 house in Kensington. Allenby is one of the best-known British generals of the First World War, and indeed Field Marshal is the highest rank in the British Army. So Allenby was born in Nottinghamshire in 1861 into a middle-class family. I don't think any of them had been army officers before him. He went to Haileybury, which is a public school just north of London, and Haileybury had been a training college for the East India Company, which had been dissolved in 1858, but it still had strong links with the British colonies in the East, so a lot of people became colonial administrators. And indeed, that was his first thought. He sat the exam for the Indian Civil Service but failed. They had a strong emphasis on languages. They would have learned Latin, Greek, French at school. Not that those languages were remotely useful in India, but that proved that someone had a linguistic aptitude to go on to learn a number of vernacular languages in India. Anyway, he fell short there. So what was going to do for a career, he decided to enter the Royal Military Academy at Sandhurst, as in to become an army officer. It was a 2-year course. Now, the Cardwell reforms of the army had taken place not very long before, under Lord Cardwell, as setting up Sandhurst, but also saying that you could no longer buy commissions, things would be about by merit. Okay, so the UK was moving towards being a meritocracy. It wasn't supposed to be just social connections and being the right sort of chap. So anyway, Allenby set out for Sandhurst, where he performed very well, and finally he was commissioned. So he became an officer, and he was put into an Irish cavalry regiment, the Enniskillen Dragoons, as in this Enniskillen, County Fermanagh, where the regiment had been raised centuries before. He was based at Colchester for a while. He was sent out to South Africa. Later he fought in Bechuanaland, or it's now Botswana. So he served in numerous different places. He knew Douglas Haig very well, who was to be a rival for the rest of his life, another cavalry officer. But Allenby was much more clubbable than Haig. He was difficult to get on with. So Allenby was elected by his brother officers Master of the Drag Hounds, even though Haig was a much better equestrian, had actually played for England at polo. I know Haig was a Scot, but the polo team was called England. Maybe it's for the whole of the United Kingdom, but obviously it's commonly understood as a pars pro toto synecdoche for the United Kingdom, England. Anyhow, so he got married, he had some children. He was an irascible sort, the bull as he was known. Partly was a raging bull in temperament. He was well above average height, 6'2". He was bulkily built, and he had a ferocious temper on him, which would cause pandemonium amongst his underlings. So he fought in the South African War and so on, where he crossed swords with Jan Christian Smuts, who was to meet more later and to be an ally of later. Then again, to the First World War, he was fighting on the Western Front like so many others, but cavalry didn't have a role, had to serve as infantry. So some people really rated him as an army officer. One of his failings is he often couldn't put into words what his plans were, not that verbally gifted. And then he was sent to the Near East because the First World War was on. The United Kingdom was battling Germany, also the Ottoman Empire, that Middle Eastern empire based around Turkey, with Turkey as its official language. It was not just modern Turkey, it was also what we now call Iraq, Syria, Palestine, Jordan, Israel, the coast of Saudi Arabia. So it's fighting there. There was this debate in the UK between Easterners and Westerners. Should the UK concentrate solely on the Western Front, or should it try to surround the Central Powers on a Europe-wide basis? Or, as David Lloyd George, the Prime Minister, said, knock away the props, saying that the other countries on Germany's side were propping Germany up. Now, some people say that is fallacious. It was really Germany was backing them up, and it was simply a waste of effort. The Allies needed every man they could get on the Western Front, and you were simply squandering their lives. Even if you defeated the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria and Austria-Hungary, if Germany was still there, you'd lose. Anyhow, it was decided to go ahead. It wasn't Allenby's decision, this major strategy, so he performed his duties to the best of his ability, fighting in Egypt, fighting his way across the Sinai Peninsula into Palestine and Jerusalem, winning the Battle of Beersheba, for example, and entering Jerusalem at Christmas 1917, a Christmas present to the nation, as David Lloyd George said. So Lloyd George was keen to present it as a victory in the Crusades, but Allenby knew that that was very unwise indeed, given that the British had plenty of Muslim allies, and there were British subjects who were Muslims. In fact, the majority religion of the British Empire was Islam. Remembering India in those days included what's now Pakistan and Bangladesh. So saying it was a crusade would go very badly indeed with our Mohammedan brethren. So when he came to Jerusalem, he famously dismounted from his trusty steed and entered the holy city on foot, out of reverence for its sacred status, because he knew that Kaiser Wilhelm II, when he visited 19 years earlier, had rode in, and that had played badly with the local populace. So he was canny enough to put Indian Mohammedans in charge of the Muslim holy places there, like the tomb of the Caliph Omar and the Al-Quds Mosque, the Dome of the Rock, as in where the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, had his night journey. So he fought his way all the way through Egypt, through Syria, and took Damascus and so on. He had plenty of Arab Bedouin allies, the Hashemites, so using these irregulars very effectively. He understood the importance of air power and how that could gel with infantry and cavalry. He used artillery effectively, so he was great at all-armed cooperation. Some people rated him, said he was ahead of his time. So he retired soon after the First World War, and then he was ennobled. Now, unusually, he took Allenby as his noble title. Now, noble titles are usually a place and not the person's surname, but he was different. So he knew Lawrence of Arabia very well. He had a good working relationship with Lawrence. Lawrence was not a very easy man to get on with, and more conventional army officers found him difficult, too clever by half, whimsical, and really didn't like him going native and adopting the Arab lifestyle, clothing, and so forth, or even language. So you see more of Allenby's house. Anyway, and so he was well known himself, Allenby, and he toured the United States with his wife, speaking at Carnegie Hall in York City and other places. He was a very wealthy man from his speaking tours when he retired. He died in 1936. He was cremated, and his ashes are interred in Westminster Abbey. So he's depicted in the Lawrence of Arabia, that biopic by David Lean, and he's seen as having an explosive temper. I think magisterially portrayed by Jack Hawkins. Was that an unsympathetic portrayal? It wasn't intended to be. It's showing the man as he really was. Anyway, so that is enough about Field Marshal Allenby. Toodaloo.